94.9 Bermuda. Our 95.
And it's now time for Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson. And a good afternoon to you, MP Chris Famous. How you doing, my brother?
Good afternoon, Brother Dawn, and good afternoon to Bermuda. How are you keeping, Brother Dawn?
Oh, it's good so far, man. How about yourself?
Me myself, I'm blessed, but we have not a spot of bad news today. Let me start off. Last week we had the passing of Brother Greg Swan. For those that knew that this man was one of the most generous people on this earth. Not necessarily money generous, but generous with his time, generous with his love, and generous with his devotion to the community. I had the opportunity to work under him for a few years at Belco. He was there as the operations engineer, and then he left from Belco to went somewhere else. But suffice it to say, while he was at Belco, he ensured that young Bermudian males especially were given opportunities to get the foot in the door at Belco, get the proper training that they needed, and once they did get training, to get upgraded. And most, I would say a good 70% of those Bermudians who came under his watch are still there at Belco. Those who have left voluntarily or just retired. So I say that to say that he was somebody that opened doors for a lot of young black men in Bermuda and gave them careers that have served them and the community well. I'm sure there'll be others who will be given tributes in due course, but I just personally want to give my own testimony of what Mr. Greg Swan had did for myself and many others at Belco. And then, unfortunately, yesterday afternoon sometime, we lost another young Bermudian, Mr. Damon Bell, who many would know him. He was a long-serving prison officer, almost 20 years, a husband, a father, a friend to many, and unfortunately, we don't have him anymore. I wasn't that tight with him. I knew him. Hey, Damon, how you doing? Stuff like that. But any loss of life is one too many. But I just want to give condolences to the friends and family of Mr. Damon Bell, his mother, Miss Pat Bell, she passed away just a few months ago, and one of his aunts as well. So definitely a lot of condolences to the Bell family. Brother Dawn, today we have Minister Honorable Jason Hayward, Minister of Labor, is going to come on and is going to speak about some recent developments in the workforce and also speak on a year in review of what his ministry has done over the last year, because as you know, labor is everybody. No matter if you work in the office or you work building houses, everybody falls under labor. So today we're going to get Minister Hayward to give an update of what his ministry is doing. All right?
All right. In fact, he is on the line.
Yes. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister Hayward. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well.
Okay. Thank you for taking some time to come speak to the people of Bermuda on our station. Yeah, you've been recently. You had to make some announcement concerning some recent issues going on in the workplace. Could you update us of what's that about?
And so I made a press statement today regarding two matters. Number one was how unvaccinated persons are being treated in the workplace.
Could you just speak up a little bit more, Minister?
Number one, we had issues in regards to how some unvaccinated people are being treated in the workplace.
Uh-huh.
And so I made a statement to ensure that the employers know that the government's position is vaccination is an individual's choice, and individuals should not be penalized in the workplace for not being vaccinated.
Mm. So what were some, if without getting into names of companies or individuals, what were some of these issues that were coming up?
So individuals are being threatened of termination if they don't get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. Individuals are being laid off. And in some instances, we've seen individuals be suspended from the workplace. And so those complaints would have came into the labor relations section and been relayed to myself. But that sort of approach to unvaccinated persons is something that we certainly don't support as a government.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what did, I guess, I am assuming that you or somebody in your ministry would have spoken to one of the companies or some of the companies as to why they think they could put this policy in place. If so, what were some of the reasons that these companies were putting forward?
Well, it pertains around health and safety. And so companies want to ensure that they can keep their employees and their customers safe. However, the Occupational Health and Safety Act says that one must be reasonable. And there are other measures that one can put in place to ensure that their workplace is safe, above and beyond requiring an employee to get vaccinated.
Okay. And roughly, to your knowledge, how many persons have been lodging complaints so far?
I would say a fair bit since the onset of the pandemic, and so I don't have an accurate statistic, but we certainly in the Ministry of Labor and through the Labor Relations section have been receiving ongoing complaints as it pertains to this matter.
Okay. So for those that have just tuned in, I was speaking to Minister Hayward, the Minister of Labor, and he's speaking about some companies that have been threatening workers with forcing them to get vaccinated. So for those that may come upon this in the future, what is the course of action that they should take?
Certainly, we're asking employers to contact the Ministry of Health to get the workplace guidance to ensure that they can have safe working environments. But if an employee feels as though they're being unjustly penalized for being unvaccinated, we're asking those employees to get in contact with the Labor Relations section, and they can call on 297-7716.
Or you may want to repeat that again, just for those who may not heard.
So the number for the Labor Relations section is 297-7716.
Okay. And let me ask you this, Minister. When you or your persons from your ministry contact these companies, what is the sort of not so much the justification, but do they realize that there's contravening the labor laws?
I wouldn't say realize they're contravening labor laws, but what we want to do is ensure that they have the appropriate workplace guidance and let them know that if they do terminate somebody on the grounds of being unvaccinated, then certainly if that went to the employment tribunal, that would be viewed as an unfair termination.
All right, so let me play devil's advocate. I saw an advert in for a grocery store in Cayman Islands, and it said that anyone applying, basically the long and short of it said that anyone applying for work, that's it, this advert came out around November, and it said anyone that was applying for work had to be vaccinated. So that what that means from a legal standpoint is that potential employees know they're coming through the door, you have to be vaccinated. Therefore, they can no longer, those ones aren't grandfathered in. So what is to prevent a company from doing that going forward in Bermuda, to put in the prerequisite for the employment that they have to be vaccinated?
And certainly it was something we look at. When we look at ongoing contract and making alterations to a current employee's contract, that's one thing. When we look at the hiring practices of a company, then that becomes another matter, which is much more difficult to provide remedy to, because we certainly can't force a company to hire an employee. And so, again, we want employees lean on the workplace guidance that the Ministry of Health has put in place to ultimately protect Bermudians in the workplace. And that was kind of the emphasis of my press statement this morning, is in designed to protect employees in the workplace. You would know, Chris, that we have a contracting employment situation in Bermuda where there are a number of companies who are reducing the amount of labor that they have. And as a result, we have a large group of persons who are getting placed in the unemployment pool. And certainly we don't want that trend to continue. But if every company took the approach that unvaccinated individuals cannot work in their establishment, what we're going to find is that 1/3 of our adult population, which is unvaccinated, will be out of the locked out of employment. And certainly that's something we cannot have or tolerate in Bermuda, especially when we're moving to a place where we're beginning to live with the pandemic.
Okay, because I noticed there was like a gray area in America where President Biden had said that all federal employees had to be mandated to be vaccinated, but then there was a pushback by some, and then there's some court cases going on saying that the government can't mandate that people get vaccinated in order to retain their employment.
And so that is the position that the Bermuda government has taken, that vaccination is a personal choice and it shouldn't be forced upon somebody based off of condition of employment.
Mm-hmm. Because even closer, a little bit, not necessarily geographically closer to him, but closer in relation, in the Cayman Islands and Turks and Caicos Islands, what we have seen is that the government, the governor, and the government have mandated that anyone who's on work permit has to be vaccinated. So, in other words, let's say I'm working there already. In order for my work permit to be renewed, I have to show that I've been fully immunized. If I'm coming in to work on work permit, I have to show that I'm vaccinated. For those that refuse to get vaccinated, the governments in those two islands have said, okay, fine, no problem, we're not renewing your work permit. And that's something that we haven't seen in Bermuda. So, for those, there are those that would like to castigate the government in certain ways, but we haven't mandated that in any way. Like.
No, certainly we haven't mandated. I don't think we'll move to that position, but there are considerations when you have work permit holders who have to travel to gateway cities that may require one to get vaccinated to travel. And so for those employees, certainly there has got to be some consideration made as to if they choose not to be vaccinated, how will employers then handle that repatriation cost?
Well, presently, the only place that persons who are unvaccinated can travel into out of Bermuda is in the UK. You can't go to Canada without a vaccination, without being immunized, and put that way. And you can't go to America without being immunized. So that is at this point, that's the stark reality. Now, whether they're going to relax these mandates, we don't know, but those are the present realities,
And that's understood, and so we continuously have a watchful eye on what gateway destinations or gateway cities and jurisdictions are actually doing in terms of their policy. so that we can be up to, speed as to what adjustments we may have to make with our immigration policy. The second matter, Chris, that I had the press statement on this morning was pertaining to Bermudians being laid off at a disproportionate rate to their non-Bermudian counterparts. And so, again, we've received a number of complaints as it pertains to Bermudians being laid off, but work permit holders retaining their employment status. And what we're actually asking for is something more equitable. And we're encouraging all establishments to have equitable policy as it pertains to layoff. But more importantly, it's also the government's position that work permit holders are to be utilized when there is not suitably qualified Bermudians. As a result, it would be inappropriate to displace a Bermudian from the workplace and retain the work permit holder on.
So let me ask this question. How let's say establishment A has, I'm just using a number, 5 non-Bermudians and 5 Bermudians. How does that workplace justify that the Bermudians are being laid off?
And see, this is the problems that we're facing. When Bermudians are being laid off, but their non-Bermudian counterparts remain in the workplace, this is where we get labor relations involved, and we have to ask those questions as to, number one, do you have a schedule in place? Number two, are you unjustly, disproportionately negatively impacting the Bermudian employee? And then this is where we share our policy in terms of our perception and the government's position as it pertains to work permit holders. But there are a number of arguments that are actually given, and some of them have to do with, well, I paid a work permit for this individual, and the individual's her, and as a result, it's if I have to repatriate this person, it's going to cost me additional costs, so it's cheaper for me to retain that person in the workplace than the Bermudian. That's one argument we've heard, but certainly what we want to see is a discontinuation of that practice.
Mm. And what specific legislation enforces that?
So there is no legislation. The Employment Act actually guides how one should be, the provisions for layoffs. There is no legislation that says who should be laid off first. But as a condition of the work permit policy is designed for guest workers to come in where there is not suitably qualified Bermudians, not to displace qualified Bermudians. And so the governing policy would be the work permit policy, but we will have those conversations with employers, and if we have to strengthen our policies or include it in law, we'll certainly do so.
Okay. Minister, we're joined on the line by Dwayne Robinson. I think you may remember him. How you doing, Dwayne?
Hey, greetings, everybody. Sorry, I got hung up with some car issues, but I'm
here. You got
to
speak up, Dwayne. You got to speak up.
Can you hear me?
Barely. Speak up like you're in Parliament, Dwayne.
I'm practically yelling right now. Still can't hear me?
We can hear you, but it's just low.
All right, hold on. How about now?
Yeah, you get it, Dwayne.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what's been discussed so far, but I do know that we've seen a few things. So let me just greet you first. How are you today, Minister? Can you hear me?
Well, as well, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. We've had a few, I want to say, labor-related disputes lately, and I just wanted to hear from you as the Minister of Labor how the ministry will be kind of working on labor relations going forward so that we can see a bit more cohesion between, ministries and the unionized workers.
Well, labor disputes are something that are natural, that naturally occur within any workplace. And so that's why we have a labor relations framework to have a way in which we can have a smooth adjudication of labor disputes. But certainly where employers and employees do not see eye to eye, we want to ensure that we have better relationships, and better relationships lead to less disputes. And so that's the government's ultimate aim, is to ensure that there is a harmonious work environment. It's important for us to not confuse genuine labor disputes with what we could say is political disputes between labor organizations and the government. And those are handled in a much different way.
All right, so Minister, we're going to go to a break right now, and then we come back and we'll come back with some other continue this discussion.
You're locked to Power 95, Bermuda's big station, at 94.9 FM, a Bermuda Broadcasting Company station.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gray Miners with your top stories to the hour, brought to you by Butterfield.
Take control of your Butterfield credit card by downloading the Butterfield Card Alerts app. Monitor your spending activity with real-time transaction alerts sent directly to your mobile device. And if your card is lost or stolen, use the app to turn the card off, preventing any further transactions from being processed. Download the app from the Apple Store or Google Play Store today. Customized credit card controls. This is banking by Butterfield. The Bank of N.T. Butterfield & Son Limited is licensed to conduct banking business by the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
Detectives have launched a murder investigation after a 49-year-old man who died following an altercation yesterday. A Bermuda Police Service spokesperson said the altercation happened around 4:35 p.m. on Wednesday in the Shelley Bay Field, Hamilton Parish area. The victim was taken to King Edward Hospital with head injuries. However, he was subsequently pronounced dead. A 46-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the incident. Anyone with information regarding this matter is asked to call Acting Sergeant Foote of the Criminal Investigations Unit on 247-1744. The Labor Ministry is claiming unfair practices by several employers who are reportedly laying off Bermudian workers disproportionately to work permit holders. Labor Minister Jason Hayward this morning during a news conference said the department has received a number of complaints from the public, some of which include mandatory vaccination policy in the workplace. Mr. Hayward reiterates the government's stance on vaccinations being a personal choice and that work permits should be used only when Bermudians are not able to fulfill a particular position. He further urges employers to implement a layoff policy or schedule keeping in line with labor provisions set out in the Employment Act 2000. The complaints, he adds, are coming from many sectors across the economy. And those were your top stories to the hour, brought to you by Butterfield.
And we now return to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
And welcome back to Motion to Adjourn. We have as our special guest Minister of Labor, Honorable Jason P. Hayward. What does that P stand for, Minister?
It stands for POL.
POL, okay. So, Minister, recently your ministry put out a year-end review of 2021. Can you take us through some of the highlights of that review?
Okay. So the reason why we actually thought it fit to put out a year-end review because we needed to ensure that there was alignment between what we're actually doing and what the public actually expects from the government. And so we put out this document to show how we're supporting workers within the workplace and how we're actually trying to build a better Bermuda. And so some of the tenets within the document speaks to how we improve social protections, how we establish sustainable frameworks to promote economic growth, the provisions we made to keep families together, the work we've done to ensure that we connect unemployed individuals with jobs, and then the provisions that we passed to improve the benefits and rights of workers within the workplace.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a lot of times, and again, I'm putting myself in the perspective of the layperson, right? A lot of times, persons make comments like, "Oh, the government's not doing enough, and then things ain't getting better," and so on and so forth. And most times, unless a person sees something that affects them positively or negatively, they themselves don't know what the government's doing or different entities are doing. It might not necessarily even be government, but any entities doing. So what path are you taking to show the people of Bermuda that your ministry in particular is working on their behalf? Like it's easy just to say things on the radio, but could you elaborate a little bit?
And so the main thing that I'm focused on is execution of objectives. And so if I say we strengthen social protections, what does that mean? That means during the pandemic, when individuals were displaced from the workplace, they were looking for government for support. The question is whether or not government provided that support. And from my lens and the departments under my ministry, I could say, yes, wholeheartedly, we provided that support. In terms of financial support, we were able to facilitate the unemployment benefit payments. In terms of financial support, we were able to assist with supplemental unemployment benefits. We facilitated a greater level of transactions for persons to get on financial assistance. We also expanded financial assistance for over 100 families who were going to time out of financial assistance last year. And so if we wouldn't have expanded financial assistance... What do you mean by
time out? Let's
So the previous government had put a 60-month benefit policy in place, which means that individuals could only receive financial benefits for a 5-year period. What we've done is we put a bill in place to extend that for additional 2 years so persons can receive 7 years of benefits. If we wouldn't have extended that particular benefit, those families would not be able to receive financial assistance. And as a result, they wouldn't have been able to receive funds for housing. They wouldn't have been able to receive funds for food or the utilities.
And what do you say to this, the critics, the taxpayers, who say if someone's been on financial assistance for 5 years and they haven't learned to support themselves, why should the government keep carrying them?
And so I wouldn't say haven't learned to support themselves. There's a number of factors why persons are on financial assistance. And so it's certainly not one size fits all. But what I would say from a government standpoint, we're engaged in financial assistance reform, where we actually want to empower persons off of the financial assistance system and make sure that they're financially independent. And that's what we're working towards. And so we'll assess the factors as to why one is on financial assistance and try to support that individual through their journey. But I wouldn't say that person hasn't learned to survive without financial assistance, without having a deep dive into the social and economic reasons why they are actually on FA.
Okay. Over to you, Devin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Callers say they can hear you.
All right, perfect. So, there's a lot of talk about the, livable wage or minimum wage. And we saw in that review that you released that, something had been recommended. Could you elaborate a bit on the status of that being passed or where that sits right now as far as the commission goes?
And so we did last March receive a minimum wage report. The legislation is written in two sections where the Wage Commission is also responsible for a living wage report. What we wanted to do is wait till we saw the living wage report to see if there's any alignment between the minimum wage report and the living wage report so that we can make an informed decision as to how we proceed with a statutory minimum wage rate. And so once we receive that living wage report this year, the ministry will be in a position to do a review of both documents and then propose a statutory minimum wage in alignment with a living wage regime for the country.
Okay, and do you believe that COVID has impacted this wage in any way? Do you believe that it will stimulate economic growth or hamper it with the way that things are going right now?
I think statistics out there has proven that increasing the minimum wage rates is not an inhibitor to economic growth. And so there are enough studies done that show you that that is not the case. For example, I come from unionized environments, and on an annual basis, we negotiate wage increases for workers, and we have been doing so for decades. What that actually does is improve the lives of those workers. And so the results of increased wages is improved purchasing power and a better, higher quality of living for workers. And so I cannot support the notion that somehow minimum wage rate erodes economic growth in a country, but it actually supports economic development.
So, Minister, let me ask a question. And on page 7 of your report, it says you've provided, not you, but the ministry has provided opportunities for job seekers to achieve personal satisfaction. That's a lot of words. Break that down exactly what that means.
And so we launched a national reemployment strategy. We worked to execute the items within that strategy. We provided training, workplace services, and programs for over 600 individuals. And that was to get persons in a better position for job opportunities when they exist. Additional to that, through the referral system, we was able to ensure that over 700 persons were re-entered the workplace. And so the ministry and the Department of Workforce Development has worked extremely hard to support workers that have been displaced from the workforce. We have ran the programs. We have put the capital in place to support those individuals. And we have seen some positive results.
Dwayne? Dwayne, are you there?
Sorry. Yep.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm hearing it in a little delay. So just following on from the work permit situation, we have heard a few things about closed category jobs. And I was just wondering, because I know a few people have asked me in passing, if there will be any increase to closed category jobs or any changes to closed category jobs in the upcoming future.
And so in January of this year, which was last month, I announced that we were expanding the amount of occupations on the closed category list. And that extension will go to the end of July of this year. But the main reason why we closed those job categories is to ensure that Bermudians have an opportunity to be retained in the workplace and to reduce the accessibility of foreign labor to employers. When we look at the list, a lot of those job categories are 95+% filled with Bermudians. As a result, we are able to determine that, number one, Bermudians are willing to do that job, and number two, Bermudians are able to do that job. And so in some of the job categories, there is no need to bring in foreign labor. Number two, we were able to do an assessment of where persons who were applying for unemployment benefits were exiting the workplace. And as a result, we recognized that we had a surplus of labor in certain areas. So we made the decision to close certain job categories. But putting restrictions on those job categories certainly creates opportunities for Bermudians.
Let me play devil's advocate on this one here, Minister. One of the categories that is closed is barbers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm bold now, but Brother Dawn could remember that at one point in time, there were all Bermudian barbers. There were no there any people that went to foreign barbers. The only foreign barbers were for, let's say, a different ethnicity. Let me leave it at that. But for the black community, there were all Bermudian barbers from Dockyard all the way to St. George's, right? Over the last 20, 30 years, that demographic has changed where the Bermudian barber is few and far between at this point. It's majority either from Jamaica or the Dominican Republic. My question to you, objectively, is how many Bermudian barbers do we have that are lining up to, no pun intended, that are lining up to actually work in the barber industry right now?
And so if you frame the question that way, it creates impression that there were closing categories to allow Bermudian barbers to enter the industry. But if I reframe that for you, closing that category actually protects Bermudian barbers who are currently in the industry, and that's what we was seeking to do with closing that job category. With the decline in our population, certainly, if you talk to barbers are certainly an occupational category with the amount of restrictions that we had in our economy that were actually struggling over a period of time. And to support Bermudian barbers, we actually closed that job category. If we can have the job category open, what we can see is saturation in our market. And we've seen where we've allowed barbers to come in, where those barbers haven't built their clientele. Those barbers are on commission. They're making very low wages. Sometimes these individuals arrive, they don't have fixed abode. And so those are some considerations that we had to take in. And if you talk to barbers out there, they will let you know that it's very difficult in the industry right now. And the pandemic created these do-it-yourself barbers. So persons start cutting their hair in their own house, which reduced the revenue that barbers were actually receiving.
You got your in here, Minister?
I was for a point in time.
All right, over to you, Dwayne.
Thank you. Braver than me. You mentioned a reduction in our population. So that leads me to another question, which is we've seen what you've done with mixed status family legislation, which I commend you for, first of all. Will we be seeing any further amendments to our immigration or any further legislation? Because, as you know, our population is in decline, and, you know, you want to have an immigration policy that not only attracts more taxpayers to our shores, but also brings back Bermudians who have moved overseas, or at least gives them employment opportunities. So I just asked if we will see anything from your ministry in the upcoming future. So I think what we have to first acknowledge is that we took a number of steps to support increase in our residential population. Number one, we ignited the Work from Bermuda program, which saw hundreds of individuals live and work in Bermuda. We then passed the legislation as it pertains to
allowing persons to become permanent resident certificate holders after 20 years and 15 years for parents of Bermudian children. That is a retention strategy to ensure that persons who want to remain on the island have the opportunity to do so. We removed the requirement for parents of Bermudian children to have to write in, submit an affidavit of domicile. And so it makes it a lot easier for Bermudians who are born overseas to get their Bermuda status and return back home. And so we've done a number of things. Part of our strategy is retention of our current population. The other one is growing our current population. But we can only grow our current population in alignment with growing our economy. And so if we want to grow our population in a sustainable way, we must ensure that our economy is growing as well.
And what for let me be objective again. What do we see as an ideal number for population?
Well, from the Ministry of Labor's standpoint, we haven't done the econometrics to determine what's an ideal number. I know that the Premier has loosely stated that 80,000 persons is an ideal number from his particular lens. And so we can say we're moving in that direction, but certainly we haven't came to what's an optimum sustainable number as it pertains to our population as of yet.
Okay. Because you have conscious people often compare us with, before we go to break in 2 minutes, people often compare us to Cayman Islands. And what they say, oh, well, Cayman Islands said they have an open immigration policy and their economy is thriving, blah, 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 which you can't, neither one are false claims. The challenge is that the Caymanians are now the minority in their own country. They're the minority in the workforce. They're the minority in their own country. So it's easy to spout numbers without giving the facts, right? So again, we as in Bermuda, we need population growth to sustain our economy and to pay into the pension. However, we don't want to get to the point where we're the minority in our country. So that's why it's important to not just for people to throw about numbers, but to have a realistic expectation of what we need and where we need to, have a cutoff point. And what's your in 1 minute? What's your thought on that?
So anything we do must be sustainable. Anything we do must take into consideration the culture of the Bermudian people. And remember, our immigration laws are designed to, number one, protect the population's interests and protect the population's interests as it pertains to Bermudians and opportunity in Bermuda and the opportunity as it pertains to land and assets as well as business ventures. And so anything that we do as it pertains to immigration has to take those three considerations into factor. And we must do something that is sustainable and doesn't erode those opportunities for Bermudians.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to go to our last break, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. Thank you, Minister.
You loved it last year, and it's back. Winner of the Best of Bermuda fundraiser, the PAL Step-a-thon. Join in on the fun. Help us help cancer patients of Bermuda. Walk anytime between February 20th and 27th and track your steps. Then enter your step count on racedayworld.com for a chance to win a free Garmin. Thank you to our sponsors, Clarion Bank, CG Insurance, Butterfield & Valves, and BF&M. The PAL's 34th Annual Walk, February 20th to 27th. Register now at racedayworld.com.
This is Pat Trott from Travel Edge. Join me on Tuesday mornings at 8:15 on Power 95 for the Travel Talk Show. We have first-hand knowledge, global experience, and industry connections to fulfill your travel needs. In this current world of uncertainty, we are your advocate. There has never been a better time to use a travel advisor. Whether you're ready to travel now or in the future, we are here to help.
And now back to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.
Yes, and welcome back. And Dwayne, I'll let you ask the minister the last question for today.
Thank you. Just wondering if, with the recent, changes to the schools that are happening, and I was wondering if the labor ministry was playing any role in the restructuring of our education system, as far as it goes to catering our Bermudians to become competitive, not only internationally but locally in our dominating fields of work.
And so certainly the role of the education system is complementary to the work that we're doing within the Ministry of Labor. If we ultimately want to connect our young people with jobs, we have to ensure that we have a school system that provides persons with the skill sets that prepares them for the world of work, or prepares them or gears them for future educational opportunities, and puts them on career pipelines much earlier than we currently observe. So any workplace or workforce strategy needs to begin in our school systems. And so you're going to see a greater level of alignment and synergies between the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education as it pertains to preparing our young people for the current and future world of work. It is no way that we can have a successful future workforce if there is not proper career guidance that is taking place within our school system, if we're not preparing persons for the changing world of work, if we don't have a continuum that starts within our school system.
And Minister, I just asked this because I got a text from one of our loyal listeners. We spoke about barbers. What is the minister's position when it comes to hairdressers and stylists?
Hairdressers and stylists are currently not closed category positions.
Sorry, say that again?
Hairdressers and stylists are currently not closed category positions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Minister, we have to have you back at another time. And thank you for taking the time to speak on the topical issues and the year-end review of what your ministry has done for the people of Bermuda. Any closing remarks to the Minister, Dwayne?
I want to echo my co-hosts. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on and being transparent. And I'm really, really interested in looking forward to the synergy between the labor ministry and the education ministry, because I believe that that's the way forward, to start early and to equip our people with the ability to transition into these jobs and dominate these fields, and not so much on the catch-up of trying to place them in workforces when they're older. So I am very happy to hear your answer to that question. So I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. And so the ministry will be focused on youth employment strategies this year. We're currently working on the policy surrounding the youth employment strategy, and we aim to release it in short order. But I believe that you will be pleased with the initiatives that are deliberately designed to support our young people, particularly between the ages of 18 and 26, to get in the workplace, as that's currently the demographic group with the highest unemployment rate. And we will make a concerted effort to ensure that those persons get the resources and tools that they require so that they can be successful in our world of work.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Have a great evening. And
Thank you.
condolences on the loss of your grandmother-in-law.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on your new nephew.
Yes, thanks. You guys have a good evening.
All right, you
take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Bermuda. Before we close out, just let you know what we have upcoming. Anything you want to add to today, Dwayne? Is there any other thing you want to speak of over the next 2 minutes, Dwayne?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm really excited about that. I can't stop talking about it. I'm really excited to hear that there's changes are being made to education, because that's something I'm very passionate about. So I'm still excited about that.
Okay. So, thank you. I want to just give a shout out to our regular listeners. Well, there's my captain, Uncle Bummy Simons, his lovely wife, Aunt Val, and the daughter. There's Miss Claudel, who always listens in. There's the Gilbert ladies from Cookfield, and Auntie from Veazey Street. I don't want to call your name because you be blaming me all up. But thank you all for your, and also Brother Biscuits from up the country. Thank you for always listening in. And thank you so many. Just letting you know what we have coming up next week. What we have next week, Dwayne?
Who's Your Family with Miss Joy Wilson Tucker.
Right. So Mrs. Joy Wilson Tucker is going to be on next week, and she's going to be talking about Bermudian family connections, because you know, as much as we know, when you talk to, oh, that's your cousin, you know, and they say, oh, that's my cousin. They tell you all the connections.
We need a whole episode for you, Famous, if you did that.
I'll leave that one alone. I'll let you handle everything next week. Well, also next week we're going to be having a small talk from the Bermuda Police Service, the Domestic Violence Unit. Young lady, I don't have her name at present, but she'll be on next week as well. Then the following week we'll be talking about Bermuda's political history with the Honorable John Barrett. He's going to talk about our history, not current events per se, but from our politics in this country actually started in 1620. So there's 400 years of political history that he'll be touching on. It's going to be an ongoing series, so we're not going to try to squeeze it all in at once. And then that's on the 17th. And then on the 24th, we're going to have a Bermudian calling in from jolly old England to give us an update of, you know, life in England, and what's it like transitioning, living in England compared to Bermuda, so on and so forth. So we're trying our hardest to put a lot of informative things, a diversity of topics. We're also looking forward to having a journalist from England call in now and then to give us an update of what's going on in England in British political and social issues. So that's what we have coming up for the month of February and beyond. Brother Dawn, thank you once again.
Thank you, guys, as always. Very informative show tonight.
Yes, indeed. So, Dwayne, any closing remarks?
I'm looking forward to that Who's Your Family segment.
Sound like you're worried, bro. Don't worry, I don't think you and I is related.
He's not talking about that. That's not what he means. Something else.
All right, brother. Brother Dawn, thank you. Dwayne, talk to you next week.
Yes, take care. Thank you.
All right, Bermuda, love you all. Respect always. Go ahead, Dwayne, close us out.
And with that, motion to adjourn is adjourned to next week, Thursday. Here we go.
And you have been listening to Motion to Adjourn with MP Chris Famous and Dwayne Robinson.